it's incredibly easy to get sucked into building things that don't actually help the customer. And they sound like a good idea, they look like a good idea, and nobody uses them. We have a professional services team. We don't want to build an agency again, but we do want our customers to get that kind of very personal, very hands-on customer success. Everything else comes and goes, but the things that you really remember are those little times where you made a difference to a human being, to a person's life. You gave them an opportunity, hired them, developed them, gave them a platform to grow from, and those are all the stories that you look back on and remember.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Seiden Podcast. I'm Anastasia, the head of product management and business analysis at Seiden.
And I'm Yura, CEO of Seiden, digital product design agency.
Today we have an amazing person, Will Critchlow. He is the CEO and founder of SearchPilot and founder and CEO of a Distilled company. So person with more than 20 years, I think, experience and SEO. So really happy to have you here today, and we're looking forward to talk about this amazing topic.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be here, and the 20 years flies by.
So right now you're leading the team of specialists, and you have a product that helps businesses to improve their SEO. So maybe we can talk about the transition from being a service company to launching the product and transitioning to a product company. So maybe you can tell, because it involves the change in the organization structure, hiring people, it's launching an entire differently business. So what was your journey here? Was it a very slow transition to this product, and you first started on launching the POC and working on some concepts of the product as a kind of pet project with your team, or you straight away launched it as a product idea and validated it and launched it to the market?
Everything takes longer than you think. I think that's the I forget who is. There's a law named after someone, isn't there, that everything takes longer than you think, even when you factored in the fact that everything takes longer than you think. So we had a goal, a dream initially, or as an agency, of being technology enabled, technology enhanced. And I think that's very common. I think many agencies look for this as a way of improving their margins, their client retention, ultimately their valuation. And so we formed an R&D team, research and development, just kind of looking for ways that we could be a better agency was the brief in the early days. And we built a few things that helped at the margin, but the idea that would become SearchPilot was just one of those things, and it was a much bigger bet. But we took an approach a little bit like you described with your client, of trying to knock down the biggest questions one by one. And yes, that did take some time. So we had a hack week initially of saying, just literally technologically, can we build a thing that is fast enough and operates in the way that we want it to operate to build the eventual product, which knocked down the kind of technology hurdle. It then took a lot longer to knock down the market demand hurdle, because this is basically an entirely new sector, an entirely new area. And we went from first revenue a few years ago to, it was still a few years before we spun SearchPilot out as an independent business. So the transition basically went R&D project, first revenue, then we turned it into a business unit within the agency. So it had its own P&L. So the finances kept track of it as a group. It had its own staff allocated to it, and we put a general manager in charge of it. In fact, it's the guy who's now the COO of the whole business, was the VP in charge of that kind of division. And we had a couple of years operating like that, growing it within the agency. And the vision kind of evolved over time. And then we had this opportunity that came along to spin it out and turn it into its own business, which was mainly enabled by the fact that we had this acquisition interest in the agency. So Distilled, the agency, was bought ultimately by a company called Brain Labs. And Brainlabs integrated Distilled into that and is doing very successfully. And the Brainlabs SEO division is what has grown out of the old Distilled team. And the fact that they were basically interested in exactly the bit that we as founders were most ready to move on from. They wanted the agency, and we wanted the software, and so there was an obvious deal to be done there. And that's it obviously took us a little while to navigate through it, but that's essentially where we ended up. Is they continue to run the agency and the evolution of that old Distilled team, and we took the software business. They helped with some finance to get it up and running in that first year, which we've now paid back and bought out. So we're back to independent. SearchPilot is now an independent, bootstrap, standalone software business. And yeah, so the evolution goes R&D project, first revenue, business unit, then spin out, and then finally independent, standing on its own 2 feet startup.
And since you have experienced both worlds, what would you say are biggest differences in this product culture and service culture? Like differences in mindset or maybe motivation of people working there?
Yeah, well, so it's interesting actually that we've got a lot of the team that has made that transition. So we spun out with, I think it was 12 people from the old Distilled team. That may not have included me. I may not be counting myself in that. Anyway, 12 to 14 people in that kind of range. And the majority of those people are still with SearchPilot. So a lot of our team has actually gone on that journey with us, which is excellent, superb. Really proud and pleased of that. We've also tried to, perhaps unusually for a software company, retain some elements of the service culture that I think often, and we hear this in our customer feedback, is we have a professional services team. We don't want to build an agency again, but we do want our customers to get that kind of very personal, very hands-on customer success experience. And so we've retained a lot of that, and I think that's actually a differentiator of SearchPilot, one of our competitive advantages. The biggest changes are, there's some two big changes to the business model that I think make a radical difference. One is the nature of what recurring revenue looks like, and retention and churn and upsell and those kinds of areas, which I think every agency tries to make their revenue as recurring as possible. But with the best will in the world, it's always less recurring than recurring software revenue. So I think that dynamic of operating in a world of metrics around churn and net revenue retention and so forth, we've had to really level up our understanding of the financial metrics that go around that. And there's a surprising unlock of just the way that cash flow works. So, an agency typically can be cash flow positive very early, but broadly speaking, collects the money as the work goes along, right? You bill monthly, typically. Software is not bought like that. I think probably as a legacy of the fact that it used to be physical, shrink-wrapped delivery of software. It's paid for in chunks. And so we typically get to bill, most of our customers are on at least annual contracts. A number of them are on 2 or 3 year contracts. And they typically pay annually in advance. And that unlocks a kind of funding model that is not available for agency growth. And even though we've not taken outside investment, effectively our customers are our investors, and we have to treat them that way. And so that enables us to grow faster than we'd be able to otherwise. I think everything else is more evolutionary. So we're investing a lot at the moment in improving the way that we think about product development and ensuring that we're building the things that our customers most want and need, and that we're building those things in the right way. And I think that's probably one of our biggest learning journeys. Is it's incredibly easy to get sucked into building things that don't actually help the customer, and they sound like a good idea, they look like a good idea, and nobody uses them. And I think that's our biggest current learning area, where I think we're improving most rapidly in that area, which is quite exciting.
What about B2B sales? I know that you moved to a segment of bigger corporations. So at the beginning, you started to trying to serve different kind of clients. Now you're focusing on specific niche. Uh, was it hard to focus on this kind of sales? Because in agency business, perhaps you had a different sales experience than selling product, or it's very similar and it helped you.
It's similar. Actually, I think it depends who you're comparing to, but I think compared to many software startups, the agency sales model helped us specifically because even a small agency project is quite expensive software. If you think about I don't know, 40, 50,000 pound or dollar agency project which is not that big, right? Even SearchPilot spent that order of magnitude on a new website, a new CRM. We've done projects that size, and we're tiny compared to our target market. When you think about the cost of software, I think a lot of software startups are scared of charging more than $100 a month or something. There's this idea that because the computer's doing it, it should be cheap somehow. And that was not a hang up we ever had. We've made plenty of mistakes, but I think charging too little is not one of them. And so our experience of selling 5 and 6 figure agency deals helped with our experience of doing enterprise. Well, it's quite enterprise software sales, right? If you're talking a 6-figure software deal, that's quite enterprise. We haven't yet done our first 7-figure one, but I hope that comes along soon. What I think is different is that there are a lot more stakeholders involved in a large software sale. So it's not the monetary size that is different because we'd sold hundreds of thousands of consulting work. It's that when you buy an agency or a consultancy, they just really deliver to their stakeholder. They just deliver to the person whose budget it is. If you're delivering software, especially we're infrastructure software, right? So our software deploys into our customer's web stack. That means all of a sudden it's not just the SEO team, the marketing team. You've got the product team, the engineering team, the infrastructure team, the infosec team, the legal team, the finance team. Literally, it could be, you could have 10 stakeholders, each of whom can kill a deal, and all of whom have to be on side before you can close the deal. So sales cycles are longer, deals fall apart in annoying ways at late stages, and I think we just have to continue to get better at that. And the model that I've been quite most excited about recently is recently read the book The Challenger Customer, which is the follow-on to the Challenger Sale, and it talks about we as business owners and as technologists, we get very excited about talking about the way that things are going to be great if you take our product, right? Here's how incredible SearchPilot is. Here's how wonderfully your SEO testing program could run. And the hypothesis of the book, which backed by a load of research, is actually it's more powerful to show them the pain that they're in right now. They actually need to understand better that it's really tough if you're not running SEO tests. If you're running a major website with tons of traffic and you're not doing SEO testing, or you're not doing it scientifically, or you're not doing it with an easy to use product that means your SEO team can run those experiments, you're actually in a very difficult, dangerous, challenging position. And that, again, I'm on this learning journey, but that's something that I've been learning about recently.
Also
And enjoying.
highlighting the opportunities, like you're here and you can reach like this level with improved process or additional service. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it sounds like a crime that you are stealing money that you could earn from your team because and from your product. Yeah,
Mhm.
because you're
Yep.
losing the opportunities. Nice. Regarding the building the product, yeah. So you already had some technical stuff, technical people who are working on agency, and then they switched to the product. What about other people? Maybe some other hires, some expertise you had to find for your product. For example, designers. Did you have designers in your team? If not, how did you build design expertise? Because in B2B sales, they say that maybe design is not number one differentiator as for now, or at least maybe a few years ago. Do you think that user experience of your product helped you to differentiate on the market, or it's mostly still about features?
It's a great question. I think actually it's an area where we're hoping to see big strides in the future, and we probably haven't invested as much as we would have had to if we were building a B2C product, or because I think broadly speaking, that's right, that especially enterprise products are bought for their capabilities more than they're bought for their user experience and their design. So we did used to have designers in the team in the agency days. We actually don't have uh, full-on dedicated design resource in the software company now. We work with outside freelancer and contract designers, and we obviously have some design capabilities, particularly in our front-end engineers. But so we've been through a few cycles of working with on specific projects with outside designers. Our whole public-facing website was built by an agency, and so we've brought in those capabilities more as we've needed them. I think actually the things that we've tended to hire. So we have recently been on a journey of hiring more experienced folks into our engineering and product team. So where I think as an agency we were very good at taking newer, less experienced, early career folks and giving them the time and space to develop and become phenomenal contributors. And that's still quite a big thing in our professional services team, because we really know how to develop, an SEO consultant. Right, we've been doing that for decades. What we've been finding recently is actually that there's a big. It's very powerful to hire engineers in particular who can hit the ground running, know what they're doing, have done this before, and I would say our last few hires, front end, back end, and DevOps infrastructure, have all been more experienced folks who have been senior somewhere else, and that is a new thing. Actually, that's a new area of learning, as well as that. I think with the way that with software being higher margin, higher retention, etc., if we can bring somebody in who can be materially better, the business model can afford to hire those more senior, more experienced folks a bit more. So I suspect that trend is going to continue. And as we add design and UX into the team, no doubt we'll go looking for folks who've been there and done that.
Yes, that's interesting because part of the value proposition of agency for their teammates is helping them to grow. But for product, usually you don't have so much time to develop your team. Your main business is building the product, and in this case, you would want to focus mostly on people who already know how to do the stuff and to be more competitive than other teams.
Yes, we talked earlier about the pros and cons of the agency model and the software model for the owner or the founder or the senior team. I think it's also true for employees. I think agencies are wonderful places to get a start, and they're great places to accelerate your early career. And then some folks find they love that work and they want to become the senior contributors. But I think for a lot of people, a career path that makes sense is agency early on, and then moving either in-house or product or wherever
Or create
as
your
they
own
gain more
product.
experience. Yeah.
The best case scenario, and my dream is that most of people who work at side and at end will found their own product or become co-founders at least.
So, I mean, for those who have that dream, I don't think that's for everyone, but definitely. And when I look back over the years, and actually it's why we built it right into the mission and vision of SearchPilot. So we have our mission, which is what the product is seeking to do, essentially, which is to prove the value of SEO for the world's biggest websites. But we have a second part of our purpose, which is the vision of creating, proving that you can create a great place for folks to work from diverse backgrounds within a high performance technology business. And we made that a kind of top level thing. That's not in our values, that's actually in our purpose. Because looking back over what was at the time when we sold it, 15 years of Distilled, is everything else comes and goes. But the things that you really remember are those little times where you made a difference to a human being, to a person's life. You gave them an opportunity, hired them, developed them, gave them a platform to grow from, and I mean that those are all the stories that you look back on and remember. Whether they go on to do their own thing, whether they stick with you and you're still working with them decades later, or they go and they become a CMO somewhere. Like there are many different paths, and all of those can be really exciting and really fulfilling, I think.
So maybe we will wrap up today's conversation. So thank you very much for your amazing insights and your perspective of the future. We're really happy having you today.
It was a really fun conversation. Thank you very much for hosting and for really insightful set of questions. I think we've gone down quite a few exciting and interesting
Nuggets.
different avenues there, and it's been really fun.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Have a great day. Guys, thank you for joining us today in this episode. I hope you did like this conversation. Please share your thoughts and ideas in the comments, what you found most insightful, and maybe you share your experience with working with SEO specialists. Looking forward to you subscribing to our channel. We love to see our subscription base growing so we could provide value to more people. And feel free to share it to your friends and family. Thanks.